Doing it? Did it say it? It's telling me. Oh,
No.
yeah, it's recording. Okay, it's recording.
Okay. Deborah Hertz? Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Jeff, for doing this. And thank you,
Yeah.
Betty, for hosting another wonderful Artie.
You're welcome.
This is Bob Jaeger's Baba story. Dear folks of Baba, as our guest tonight, Bob Jaeger will tell his story of the events leading up to his life with Baba. He heard of Baba in the late 1960s, and like Rich Sander, who shared last week, he grew up in Denver, Colorado. Rick Chapman, originally from Denver, met Baba in the mid 1960s and had an important role in his Baba story. Early on, Bob joined the Denver Baba Group, which was one of the most active groups in the country, holding weekly meetings, publishing a magazine on psychological research as it relates to Baba, and they organized a number of very moving Sahavas gatherings over the years. Bob himself has written many delightful poems, revealing his intimate devotion to Baba. Some of them are included in a book entitled Whistling Past the Tavern. Bob has been an active and much valued participant in our late night chats. He says of himself, after much wandering, I became a fourth, then a sixth grade teacher, and concurrently a husband and a father, and more recently a retiree, grandfather, and widower in Englewood, where I have lived on and off for many years. I add that he is a great friend, a sincere and self-effacing lover of our beloved Baba, with a great sense of humor, a deeply attentive listener, and is always ready to share the struggles and breakthroughs of his inner life in our late night gatherings. In his love, Jeff. And
Thank
I might
you.
add a PS that he is also going to edit Jeff's book.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Um, yeah. So as he shares his story, don't hesitate to, ask questions along the way because, uh, we may draw some things out of him that he's forgotten. Stir up the old embers. Was that? So, but this is an experience that Bob had early on in his life with Bob, and he's going to read that. He's very encapsulated it beautifully.
Well, Jeff, I thought that was on our book, but I haven't been able to find it.
Oh,
So I'm going to have to,
yeah, you go ahead.
let me go ahead and I thought it was in there, but maybe it isn't. Um, but maybe you can find it. Anyway, I um, I looked what I did trying to prepare for this. It is I looked back through my notes and records, and because I had written so that I wouldn't forget too much. I A number of years ago, I had written down my story as I remembered it, and so I dug that out again, and I went through it and thought about what I might add, and so what I'm going to do is try to look at my notes and read what I wrote. But please interrupt if you. I'm going to try to pay attention, and Jeff can kind of let me know too, or you can just kind of unmute yourself and say, "Stop now," and we'll just have a comment or a question or whatever you wish. But mostly I'll be kind of reading my story that I wrote down, which is more comfortable for me, I think, instead of just kind of trying to remember and stumbling over things and wandering around too much. So I will do that. I start out by saying, telling one story of coming to Baba, it's really difficult to know where to begin. When the stream of life finally meanders into Baba's ocean, earlier events remembered sometimes assume a meaning and a clarity they did not have at the time. For instance, I remember waking early in the morning as a very young child, lying still, alone, yet not alone, as doves cooed in the eaves outside my window, and the sunlight slowly washed across the room, turning everything golden, alive, bathed in joy and love, though I didn't have words for it then. And it's one of the clearest, most wonderful memories that I have. And quite some time ago, I wrote a poem about that. So I'll read that to you. It's very short. Old man recalls the boy, listening as doves in the eaves greet morning sun, the light, the warmth, the gentle coo. There is no rhyme here, no scheme, only a moment from long, long ago, yet still so clear, and a wondering, where from that warmth, that light, and why recall just now looking at you holding a lamb. The boy was simply there, no words, and then it all grows clear. You were there, beloved. You are here.
Beautiful. Lovely.
Another very clear memory when I was older but still a child is of riding in the back of I was riding in the back of a pickup truck on a fishing trip with my dad and one of his friends. It was very cold, and I pulled the sleeping bag and canvas tarp up around me close and fell asleep to the hum of the tires. I dreamed and heard music more beautiful than anything I had ever heard or would ever hear in my waking life again. It was a music of many instruments and then voices swelling and blending and a bursting joy that again brought a deep happiness. I woke slowly, eyes shut tight, wanting not to wake, but to go back, longing to go back as that music faded. The church choir was beautiful, no doubt, but nothing compared to this. Though I was a happy child with loving parents, I had never experienced such deep happiness in my short waking life. I think now that even then the difference between spirit and religion was somehow made clear, though I was too young to understand it in that way. So, and I have no idea where that came from. I mean, I could probably explain it if I thought about it and think, well, it was just, how the humming of the tires sort of, you're dreaming. It's like riding in a train and it's chugging down the tracks and you're dreaming and the chugging of the train sort of influences your dream. Maybe that's what it was. But it was a happiness that is a depth of happiness that was very rare. And in my life even as a young boy, then it was just completely, I don't know what to say about it, except there it was. And I remember it. I remember it very clearly. So, well, speaking of religion, my parents attended the local Lutheran church, and I attended confirmation classes 2 afternoons a week for years when I was in junior high. I went because I was expected to go, and the classes were required before one could be confirmed and take communion. Though my parents took me and my brother to church every Sunday, they never pushed religion at home or referred to faith or the Bible or anything having to do with religion. They liked to watch Oral Roberts on TV, but never insisted I join them. Church was pretty much a Sunday thing. My clearest memory of those endless services is of passing out cold a couple of times during the standing parts. I'd stand with my knees locked, not realizing I shouldn't do that, and I'd pass out and they'd haul me outside and wake me up and bring me back in again. So what can I say?
Boy, that's real devotion there.
As a high school student, I'd lay awake in bed Sunday mornings hoping Dad would leave me alone, but he'd always wake me for church. So we always went until I got old enough to make it clear I really didn't want to do that anymore. No. In spite of the confirmation classes and the interminable Sunday mornings, none of it made much of an impression, as I recall now. I used to like to say they tried to inoculate me, but it never took. I didn't feel a deep connection to any of it. Now I would say that not much of it touched my heart, except perhaps some of the beautiful hymns we shared, maybe a few of the prayers. As for the guilt and sin, fire and brimstone, eternal damnation of everyone but Christians, just words that left me cold. I remember asking myself at one point, probably as a high school or college student, who is the worst, most horrible person you know about? Being an early boomer, Hitler came to mind. But eternal damnation? After high school, I went to Colorado State University. I enjoyed being on my own, made good friends, got good grades, and began to think I'd go for a degree in English, my favorite high school subject due to some extraordinary teachers. Then one day I happened to run into one of my professors. We walked across campus together and chatted. Although he didn't label himself, I gathered from our conversation that he considered himself an atheist. We talked our way across campus and parted. Though he was a kind and gentle man, willing to talk and listen, our encounter left me feeling locked away in a cold and lonely place I had never before experienced. I no longer had any connection to the religion of my childhood, but I knew there had to be more than this. When summer break came, I moved back to Denver, transferred to Colorado University Extension, and attended classes in the evening while living with my parents and working full-time as a trainee bank teller. I and my childhood pal, John Hobson, known as JJ by then, had started hanging out at the sign of the Thoreau, a coffee house where we met good friends and interesting people, one of whom was Doug Anderson, the manager, and sometime or other Doug's wife, Mabel. Outwardly, things seemed to be okay, but inwardly I was confused. And though I wasn't depressed or terribly unhappy, there was always something missing, some restless, empty space that could not be filled by pot or the 3-2 beer we consumed in huge quantities, or poetry or music or wild motorcycle rides. I was still living in my parents' house, but I had moved from my childhood bedroom into the unfinished basement with a bed on the floor and my collection of science fiction novels. I had stopped attending church by then. In 1965 or 66, Doug and Mabel Anderson and JJ decided to go to India to find Rick Chapman, a high school friend of Doug's. They asked me if I wanted to join them, but I didn't. I couldn't. Going to school, having a job, I couldn't do it. I do not remember if Meher Baba had been mentioned, but JJ and Doug and Mabel hitchhiked to Mexico, found a job on a Norwegian oil tanker out of some place or other, sailed across, wound up in Calcutta, went across country and found Rick, and JJ got drafted while they were over there, had to come back a little bit early, and so they had quite an adventure, but I did not join them. And they did not meet Baba. Rick did, of course, but Doug and Mabel and JJ did not. In 1967, they returned from India. JJ came to my parents' house, downstairs to my cave, and handed me a copy of The Everything and the Nothing, a copy that I still have. I read that book, and though I don't remember any deep feeling or what I thought of it at the time, I think my mind was satisfied and some questions answered I didn't even know I had. And things started happening. I started meeting Baba lovers, a few of whom are still on the planet and close friends. And there were Baba meetings with readings and discussions and occasional films. I left the bank and got a job as a trainee bookkeeper at a small manufacturing plant, closer to my classes at CU. When Meher Baba dropped his body in 1969, I did not know what to think. I guess I always figured I'd get to India sometime, and Baba would still be there. So I was surprised, but I don't remember having any deep sadness or terrible feelings about it. My friend Winnie Barrett and others made preparations to go to India for the Great Darshan. That seemed completely impossible to me. And anyway, I didn't feel drawn to try to go. Now, of course, I am tempted to look back and berate myself as a fool for not dropping everything and just going. But Baba is the dealer, and in 1969, India was simply not in the cards for me. I know that Baba was drawing me in, but as I recall, there was not yet a deep feeling component in my life with him. I don't mean to say that it was all simply a matter of belief or of intellect without any feeling at all, but mostly it seemed I was simply going on with my life, drifting here and there, trying to figure out what I was supposed to do. You see, my parents were very loving people, but they never tried to push me into anything. Sometimes I guess I wish they had. They sort of let me go my way, and they never said, "Oh, you should do this," "Oh, you need to get a better education," "Oh, you need to get this job or that job." I mean, it wasn't something that they did. They took care of me, they loved me, but they left. They seemed to leave a lot of this just sort of up to me and what I needed or wanted to do. So. Well, in 1970, I got a job working in Richmond, Virginia, at the port of Richmond on the James River. I thought it might be a way to get to India. The company had 2 German vessels on charter, shipping raw materials to Rotterdam from the DuPont plant nearby. I knew a little German. All of my grandparents were German. And I got to know some of the crew members, took them shopping, helped out in the office. The company folded, and the first mate of one of the vessels asked if I wanted to come along on their last voyage to Rotterdam, where I'd be free to find a way to get to India. Hey, I had money saved. I was thinking of going. When my old pal JJ turned up, and we hatched the idea of going back to Denver and going on a long distance bicycle ride. Only Baba knows what he protected me from getting into on my own in Rotterdam and Europe and other places I would have wound up. I can't imagine. When I look back on all of this now, there's a sense of unreality. Whose life was that anyway? I mean, outwardly, I seemed, I think, a responsible person who worked hard, did his duty, paid his bills, and didn't try too hard to destroy himself. Always an introvert, I had become a chameleon who went along, tried to fit in, belong. But inwardly I drifted, always the drifting, not really fitting, lacking the sense of purpose many folks seem to have, accompanied by a vague feeling of unworthiness. I had always been impressionable, naive, and now it seems to me that Baba, of course, is protecting me from things that would not have been good for me. He did allow me to lose an eye throwing a knife at a tree when I was 12 years old. But that kept me out of Vietnam and provided endless opportunity for pranks, like my plastic eye suddenly appearing on top of friends' ice cream cones or pizza slices. I do remember saying, "Forgive me," or maybe "God forgive me," as that knife sliced across my right eye. Why? I have no idea. When JJ and I returned from our 3-month bicycle hitchhiking freight train hopping trip to the Western US and parts of Canada, I got a job working as an oil field roughneck. It reminds me of Rich Sander. I never knew that Rich had worked in the oil fields until he told his story last week. So, and then I went back to school for a couple of semesters to finish my degree in English and earn a teaching certificate. In 1971, I moved out of my parents' place and into a house on Detroit Street in East Denver, where my Baba lover friends Winnie, Doug and Mabel, JJ, Phil Norman, and Nancy Bohm had lived. Not sure how I felt about teaching, I went to work for a concrete setting firm that JJ worked for. When the form setting job ended, I had enough money saved to take almost a year off. I didn't have a car. Expenses at the house were very low, and I thought I'd use my time to read and do a lot of writing. What I did was hang out, sleep late, linger with coffee over the newspaper and crossword puzzles in the morning till it was too late to accomplish much. I did a lot of reading, though. Took long walks, stayed up late playing cards with whoever happened to be around. Sunday evening Baba meetings were well attended, and I continued to enjoy reading Baba's words and meeting his lovers. I met Rich Sanders somewhere in there. Rich had an apartment in Denver, and Judy Scheck lived in the Denver area then, and we started having Baba meetings at various places. We'd go from one place to another, and we had a lot of meetings on Sunday evenings at our Detroit Street house. I finally had to do something with my life, so I signed up for the Peace Corps and specified that I wanted to go to India. At the same time, I applied for a teaching position in Littleton, a Denver suburb. I figured I'd do whichever one happened first, and Baba would decide since I couldn't. Then I took a bus for my first visit to the Mayor's Center in Myrtle Beach in the summer of 1972. I had a lovely cross-country Greyhound ride through country I'd never seen and arrived at the old gateway late in the afternoon. They put me in the cabin on the hill. I met Fred and Ella, Kitty and Elizabeth, visited Baba's house. I walked the beach, sat in the barn for hours, spent hours reading, walking trails, visiting the lagoon cabin, hanging out in the old kitchen with other visitors. I had never been in such a wonderful, peaceful, love-filled place. When I got back to Denver, I found a note on the kitchen corkboard about a call from the principal at East Elementary School in Littleton. I interviewed and was hired. Shortly after I signed the contract, I got an acceptance letter from the Peace Corps. They wanted to train me as an agricultural advisor and send me to West Bengal. Okay, Baba, teaching it is. The next summer in 1973, I took my second trip to Myrtle Beach in the VW bug I had bought when I started teaching. I had been seeing a good friend, a woman with whom I had spent many happy hours, taking walks, talking, visiting a local restaurant, and a bar for drinks and conversation. We were both in our late 20s by then, and we started talking about getting married. We were good friends, got along well, so why not get married? We did. I moved into her apartment, and we divorced after a terribly unhappy 3 months. I moved into a garden-level apartment that I shared with JJ and lived there alone after he moved to California, got married, and joined the Sufis. In 1976, I took my first trip to India. So I'd been teaching for 4 years. I shared the trip with a fellow I had met at LaGuardia Airport in New York, who was also going to Mehrabad. I don't remember his name, but we kept each other company through the long flight with many stops, London, Paris, Rome, and one early morning somewhere in the Arabian Peninsula. It was still dark as we approached the runway, and all I could see were miles of oil well gas flares. We landed briefly at 2 a.m., and the attendants opened the door to outside air that poured into the plane like wind from a blast furnace. It seemed a brief stop in hell before continuing. We landed in Mumbai, and without stopping for rest, caught a cab to Victoria Station. Somehow we found the right train and chugged over the Ghats and into Pune, stopping many times for passengers and snack vendors that shouted outside the open windows. Then a bus ride through the night to Ahmednagar, and a Tonga from the bus station to bed, finally, at the Daulat Hotel, close to the trust compound. Next morning after chai, we signed in at the trust office, where we met Adi, and then took a bumblebee to Vilu Villa, where we were to stay. My time in India was filled with joy. I felt so at home. I took 500 slides, a number of which show the old Pilgrim Center foundations just being laid, as well as many lovely photos of the Mandali. I wandered through Erangaon and Pimplegaon, meeting local people, and was astonished at their friendliness. I listened to Erich and Mani in Mandley Hall, climbed Seclusion Hill with Erich, spent many hours in the samadhi. Vilu was wonderfully feisty and warm, and I had a great time with the other Baba lovers who stayed at her house. In the days, you know, I've shared some of the details of my story with so few people, so it's just a wonderful to share them with my dear Baba lover friends. I mean, some of the stuff is sort of, it's like, what? Anyway, I'm so glad that I have a trusted group of pals here that I can share some of these things with.
Hey, Bob.
Bob,
Pardon me?
Bob,
Ladies
it's
first.
Marta.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark.
If you think that we're bored or this isn't interesting, I just want to reassure you that this is very interesting. And I appreciate any juicy details that you want to include.
Okay, coming up.
Okay.
Let me ask you this before you go on.
Yeah.
What kind of sense of God or a higher purpose or whatever did you have in your childhood? Had you kind of brought anything, kind of approached thinking of, what this whole place was about,
You know, one memory that I have from childhood was staying awake at night. I had started, how old was I? 7 or 8, maybe 9, 10. I would go to bed and I would say to myself the usual prayer that my mom and my grandma used to say to me and that I'd say back to them. Now I lay me down to sleep. So I'd say that, and then I started saying prayers for everybody, my parents, my brother, my school friends, the president. I remember including the president, people. I mean, and the prayers got longer and longer and longer and longer. And I thought, oh my word, what is this? Why am I doing this? And I finally stopped doing that because it began to feel more like I don't know, something that I was supposed to do, like a duty almost. So I guess I had, maybe it was something from church. My parents never made me do anything like that. So as far as having a sense of any sort of higher purpose, I mean, I don't know. When I lost my eye and said, God, forgive me, and when I encountered that professor on that walk and just felt that bleakness, and even considering something like atheism, I guess I really did believe in God somehow or other, but I really can't say that I had any clear sense of higher purpose at that point in my life.
Hey, Bob,
Is that kind of what you're asking about?
Yeah, good.
Bob, you kind of glossed over it, but I remember going to the Tarot coffee shop, and I'd like you to give a description of how magnificent that was. That was the hippie center near downtown Denver.
Oh, that was an incredible place. We started going there. My friend JJ and I started going there back in about 1963 or 1964. And it was, I mean, we were both sort of early, but this was right on the edge of the beat generation was transforming into the hippie generation. And so we were right kind of there on the cusp, I guess. But the sign of the Tarot was this incredible coffee house with these paintings of tarot cards on the walls. A big space with an old espresso machine that Doug would run. I'm surprised the thing never blew up. It was just outrageous. It was this gas thing that would hiss and steam, and the place was filled with smoke. People, smoking their cigarettes and their cigars and their pipes, and we'd sit around and drink coffee until 3 o'clock in the morning and share poetry and tell stories. And it was quite a place. It was quite a place. And I met a lot of folks there. It really meant a lot to me. It's kind of a transformative place in my life. I'd never seen anything like it. And I met so many folks that I'd never even thought of this sort of culture existing before. So, yeah. You got any memories of it, Rich?
Well, Bob and I didn't know each other back then. And I went down there. I remember going down there one winter, and it was really cold. It was an old gas station right on the corner, had a lot of glass windows. and there was a huge old wood stove in the middle. That's what the heat was. So they had this huge old Italian chrome-plated coffee machine at one end and this fire burning in the middle. And all these young people, like bohemians and soon to be hippies, you know, and I'm sure there were a lot of drug connections being made there, but I wasn't a part of that at the time. And it was a total blast. It was like, oh my God, this is where it's happening. It was kind of like being in San Francisco in the middle of Denver, you know.
Yeah, it was really something. And I don't know if there was any drug selling going on there, but the one incident I do remember was somebody lit up a cigarette once that smelled really strange. And somebody called the police, and the police came and were in the process of arresting this guy, and he's saying, no, no, wait a minute, no, this isn't pot. I smoked this because of my allergies, and it's something that no, it's herbs, and it's so, which may have been the truth. I mean, as I recall, had I smoked any marijuana at the time? I might have. It didn't smell like pot, but somebody, it was a pretty startling incident. Anyway, back to the Dooney.
Yeah.
In the days leading up to the Dooney, I had thought much about what I would give up.
Excuse me, Bob.
Yeah.
I have a request. You're a fantastic, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. You're a fantastic presenter. I'm wondering if you can do it more, I'm trying to think of the word, from the cuff rather than continue to read from you. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of the word. It's just not coming to me.
I do, but
you get very animated when you do it. The animation is fun to watch.
Yeah, well, I'll try
and listen to.
I really kind of need to keep up with my notes because it's sort of
gotcha.
I'm thinking about this for days. But I'll try to be. Yes, I'll try. Thanks, Peter.
Just Peter's 20 years younger than us, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, Peter probably has a much better memory than So in the days leading up to the Dooney, I had thought much about what I was going to give up, what I was going to throw into the Dooney. Well, I finally decided that lust had to go, since it had brought me nothing but difficulty and disappointment in my life. I was determined. I stood with the other pilgrims and watched Padre light the fire, and we lined up. I took a stick, knelt, bowed, and my mind went blank. I threw in a stick with nothing attached that I was aware of. As you wish, Baba. On my last day at Mehrabad, I walked up the hill to the Samadhi to say goodbye. I laid my head on that cool stone at Baba's feet. I mean, I had spent so much time in the Samadhi. You could still walk in by then and go up next to the windows and sit next to the tomb. And you could be in there sitting sometimes for hours without seeing anyone. I mean, it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary. And, you know, occasionally someone else would come in and it was fine, but it was just extraordinary. So on my last day at Mehrabad, I walked up the hill to the Samadhi to say goodbye. I laid my head on that cool stone at Baba's feet for a long time, and then I sat. I had never felt more at home than in these fleeting few weeks. So this is where I fit. This is home. I did not want to go. As I left the tomb, Nana Care hugged me, and out of nowhere, taking me completely by surprise, I sobbed. I just burst into tears. I sobbed. I couldn't stop. But Nana held me until I did. I left, caught a bus, a train, a plane, and got off at the airport in New York. The only time on that trip that I experienced something I might call culture shock was getting back to New York on that. Crazy. Shortly after I returned, my ex-wife came for a visit. We talked and decided we'd give marriage another go. That time it lasted 2 months. Let me read it. I'm going to take a little break here and read a short poem. It's titled, Here's the Deal. Don't worry, you say, be happy. Bring the cards and make it snappy. Play with me the hand you're dealt, hard as rock or smooth as felt, fullest house or poor and lean. I, the king, will wipe you clean. Ready? Go all in and have no doubt. I, the joker, will wipe you out. Why feel cheated? Why cry and whine when all the cards and hands are mine? So I'm home from India, and 15 or so years passed during which I taught elementary and middle school, grew into deepening friendships, got married again, raised two wonderful sons, found myself divorced again. This time I felt as though I had well and truly had it. This marriage business was not for me. I had my sons, my career, I had Baba, my old friends. And then I met my dear Jerry at Doug and Mabel's house, oddly enough. She was also divorced, also with two children, and also not looking for a relationship. Then we got married in the backyard of the house we bought together with enough room to raise our children. Then sometime after many adventures and misadventures with growing children, Jerry and I drove to Western Colorado to visit an old friend for a few days. One night, while there, and this was something. It was a dream, but it was something that was so important in my life. And I'm going to try to describe it. I had a dream. We were visiting this old friend, staying in his house in Fruita, Colorado, which is just outside of Grand Junction. So it was a very long and vivid dream that I will try to describe. To begin with, I'll say that the setting of this dream was very different from other dreams. I don't always remember dreams. I don't pay too much attention to them, but when I do, they seem usually to have occurred, not in a dark place, but in sort of a twilight place, a place that feels, I don't know, sort of closed in rather than open. Okay, that most dreams sort of feel that way to me. In this particular dream, I found myself in a brightly lit, wide open space. It felt sort of like a city with a lot of folks. I was walking along and saw a man and a woman sitting on a bench talking intently, seriously. The man may have been holding the woman's hands or arms. I don't exactly remember, but for some reason, I felt he was threatening her. I approached and said something threatening to him. I don't remember the words. I told him to stop. They got up, left the bench, walked down a stairway through a brightly lit tunnel. I followed them to a room where the woman was getting married, and the man I had threatened was the minister performing the marriage ceremony. I approached him and asked his pardon for my behavior. I walked back up the stairs to a bright plaza and a wide open space where one could see far into the distance. The plaza was filled with people. I looked up and lifted my arms, maybe everyone did, and a shower, a waterfall of wrapped candy fell from above. Okay, I woke up. I mean, I woke instantly when that wrapped candy fell from above. That dream at that time, still clear in every detail, and my heart was overflowing with the deepest joy I had ever experienced. I mean, this was a joy like nothing I had ever experienced in waking life. I woke up Jerry, grabbed her hand, pressed it to my heart, and said, "It's all here. It's all right here. Everything's a gift." I told her about the dream, and she went back to sleep, reassured that I had not completely lost my mind. I was farther from sleep than I'd ever been in my life. It must have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 in the morning. I got up and went into the living room where I sat for the next few hours, still in that amazing joy, repeating Baba's name, and every stray thought other than Baba's name that tried to arise, some fragment of a plan or a hope or a fear or a snippet of memory, whenever anything like that tried to surface, the joy repelled them, spun them off and away like droplets from a whirling top. I just, I sat there. The waves of joy slowly ebbed, but I still felt their warmth clearly throughout that day and the days and weeks that followed, no matter whether I was walking the dog or fixing dinner, going somewhere. This touch of profound joy now reminds me of those childhood experiences. But this was much deeper and more lasting, more clear. I'd had much happiness in my life, but nothing as deep and heart-opening as this gift of Baba's love. What else could it have been but Baba's love? So I wrote a poem about this some time ago, and I'd like to read that. The poem is titled Prasad. One night you came to me in sleep, more real than waking words can ever speak. I looked up in thanks, arms raised, and saw a flood of wrapped candy falling wide and deep. Waking to waves of joy overflowing, washing with love I cannot imagine, create, or keep. I pulled my wife's hand to my heart and said, it's all right here, everything's a gift. Sleep far gone I sat, repeating your name, as all fragmented thoughts welling up to keep me from you were flung like drops from a whirling top, and overflowing heart could neither laugh nor weep. Baba, 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 the only thought worth thinking, the only chance at last of a clean and lasting sweep. Sun rose, day began, and still your love was here, though fainter as hours rolled, then days, weeks. That touch you gave, that wave, your gift of love, remains ever since locked tight in hearts deep. Awake or asleep, what better memory to keep?
Beautiful.
That was beautiful. I see that Sabine has their hand up.
Oh, yeah, Sabine.
Yeah, Bob, how old were you when you have that experience?
Let's see. I believe that was probably maybe 1992 or 93. Or no, 91 or 92. I think it was 92. Jerry and I got married in 93, and I think we had visited my friend before we had got married. And so I think it was 92, although it might have been a year or two after that, after we were married. I don't exactly, it was in there somewhere. So I was
38.
40, let's see. I was born in 46, so 56, 76, 86. Yeah, 30, 38, something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Um, now, so I want to do a little side note here on the working of memory. I wrote the poem that I read to you after I found some old notes describing the dream. Before I found the notes, I had over the years described the dream to various of my dear Baba friends. Some new folks that had come to Baba and who I was getting to know and asked me questions about my life. And so it was not something that I told terribly often, but I did tell it, when it felt appropriate. But the memory somehow changed from Prasad falling from the sky to actually seeing Baba in the dream, standing before Baba, and a wave of wrapped candy appearing behind him, towering, then breaking, at which point I awoke. Now, I did not consciously or purposely change the story. So why did it change? What changed the memory? Maybe Baba's assurance that it was indeed his prasad. I have no idea. I didn't, but I know that I did not consciously make the choice to change the story. Memory can be a sort of malleable, very strange thing. But anyway,
So Bob,
yeah.
so Bob, so that what you just said, was the new version another dream, or was it just a memory of the previous dream that had changed the memory?
It was a
dream.
memory. It was a memory of the same dream, but the memory changed from prasad falling from the sky to a wave of wrapped candy appearing behind Baba. Okay.
And was Baba present in the original dream? He wasn't physically present, right?
He wasn't. He wasn't.
No, but in the second version, he gave you that gift. He appeared. Gotcha.
Well,
okay.
He changed my memory because I sure didn't change it. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't a second dream. It was a different memory of the original dream that I had had.
And what were you doing when you had that memory? Do you remember?
I don't. I remember telling the story like that a number of times. Telling the story of the dream like that a number of times, but I don't recall specifically when that change occurred. So also, I haven't always shared the beginning of that dream either. The part of the dream about running into the people sitting on the bench and then going down and the marriage ceremony, because I have absolutely no idea why that lovely dream with Prasad falling from the sky would start with an event like that. But it was part of the same dream. Those were not two separate dreams. It was all part of that same event that woke me up and just full of joy. So how are they linked? What was going on? I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I've never been one who I've never tried to I know there are folks who can interpret dreams and kind of give them a deeper meaning perhaps than I can understand, but I've never been able to do that. So I have no idea where the first part of that dream came from. Now, all right, since we're on the topic of dreams, sometime later, after that first dream, this happened during one of our early Rocky Mountain Sahavas gatherings at Camp La Forêt. We had, I think our last gathering was in 2019. I haven't had one for a few years, but we had our early ones at a place called Camp La Forêt, a beautiful Christian camp with some places to sleep and a huge, lovely lodge with a fireplace. And I think Jeff and Nan joined us at one of our Camp La Forêt gatherings. Yeah. Well, I had another very brief dream in which this time I saw Baba in the dream. Baba passed by the place where I was sitting, oddly enough, on the toilet in the men's room at Camp La Forêt. So I'm dreaming. I'm sitting on the toilet. I look up. Baba passes by, looks straight at me, points at me, and gives me a stern look that pinned me to the wall. I mean, just pinned me to the wall. Now, this one was a little daunting, and I had no idea what to make of it until on a trip to Myrtle Beach in April 2011, Bill LePage was there. I was having a chat with Bill LePage, and I told him about this. I learned that he had a similar dream, and the clear meaning he got was, "You are mine." Oh, Baba, I hope that's so. I'll take it. I um okay. I'm almost at the end of this here, thinking of all the wandering, the belonging and not belonging, the fitting and not fitting. An event at Vilu's during my 1976 trip that I wrote down years ago comes to mind. It's in the book Whistling Past the Tavern, but I'd like to share it here. So this happened in 1976 while I was staying at Vilu Villa. It wasn't a dream. I did this silly thing. One night, late at Vilu Villa, sleepless, I crept through the quiet house, out the front door, across the courtyard, out the gate, and down the path into darkness. I sat on a low wall in that starry vastness and watched as water buffalo and carts with swaying lanterns and people passed, walking, riding, coming, going. They stared at me, but said nothing. And under the moonless sky, unfettered by streetlights in that timeless space, a place so alien I neither belonged nor did not belong, the mind finally pushed forth a trickle of nervousness, and I went back down the road and to bed and to sleep. For years, I thought it all simply a whim on my part, but I know, Baba, you gave that moonless Indian night, and ever since have planted me here and there in this now, where some current of not belonging persists and often surges up a want of not wanting to belong to any place, but only to you, beloved Lord. What to make of all this? Life goes on. It's all a gift, the good and bad, the joy and the pain, the struggle and the rest. Sometimes daily shifts between familiarity and strangeness, all gifts to remind me that has all been and is all Baba all the time. Baba, what the dream music was all about, why the doves sing, whose company I long for. There was really no drifting at all, but only the flow of life's river to him, always with his help. And now his name, the golden hammer, in my meager kit of tools for fools, hoping to be his however and whenever he wishes. So here I am, still hoping, trying to fit, though at times, even in familiar circumstances, life seems very strange. So it's okay. Okay, I've got a few more poems I can read, but I know it's getting late. And so if there are any more questions or comments, or if you want to ask anything, please do. I'll stop there, and if there's time and you wish, I'll do a couple more.
I'm calling on Terry.
Terry.
I'm curious, were any of your wives Baba lovers?
My second wife, with whom I had my two sons, she attended Baba. When everybody in our Baba group was having kids, and we would have picnics in Dixon and Elaine's backyard, and all the kids would be there running around. And my wife was there with me then, and I attended Baba meetings here and there, and but she sort of dropped away. I'm not quite sure why, and joined a church, Mile High Church, which is kind of a new agey sort of place that doesn't have a specific. It's not a Christian or any other denomination, and she moved over to Grand Junction, where my daughter lives, and my stepdaughter, and she still comes here occasionally and stays in town. And we've maintained a cordial relationship. We're still old friends, and we have kids, So we go to birthday parties together, and we take the kids, for outings and things. So, but yeah, she did not remain. She still we still share ideas. I still talk about Baba when we have conversations. She loves reading Hafez and Rumi, and so whenever those conversations occur, it's always a good opportunity to talk about Baba, and she's accepting of that. But I guess so. My answer is I don't know. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. I don't know.
What about Jerry?
Yeah, what about Jerry?
Jerry became a Baba lover. Jerry was just, yeah, she was born in Kentucky, um, Kentucky Christian parents. Um, her story is quite something. But we used to have our Sahavas planning meetings here at the house, and she'd sit in with those, and she would meet. She actually went to Myrtle Beach with me when I retired. We made a long cross country trip, stopped at the center for a few days, and stayed there, and she's met Alan Cohen and a few of the other folks who came, and she couldn't really go to all of the Sahavases because she, as the years went on, became very ill with COPD and was on oxygen, and so traveling became very difficult. But yes, she was a Baba lover. So that was we had 28 absolutely wonderful years together. So yeah.
That experience that that kind of transcendent experience you have is on page 49.
Oh.
Listen to this. This is the kind of experience that's possible to have with Baba.
Oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong book. Where did it go?
Whistling Past the Tavern.
Yeah. Here it is. Okay. Swift kick. Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten about this one. Yeah, this actually happened. In the orange circle of sweet sour sauce, this bright yellow yolk appears, festive, but too generous a dollop on the egg roll claws through sinuses to explode like napalm behind the eyes, until sneezing, crying, gasping for breath, all consciousness goes, no worry, no want, no future or past. Nothing in the universe matters. For this fiery fraction of a second, free. Chicken soup for the soul? Nah, nice enough in its way. But what the soul really wants may be more along the lines of too much Chinese mustard.
I like that. That's the kind of zany guy he is.
I would like to share one more short one that I ran across the other day. I published a book of poetry a long time ago, back in 1988, and a lot of them aren't specifically Baba poems, but this is one of my favorites that I've just loved, and maybe it's a Baba poem. It's something that happened to my son when he was probably my son and I, when my son Matt was probably, I don't know, maybe 6 years old. We used to spend a lot of time out in the yard and playing. And this is titled Boy with Butterfly. And he found a chrysalis that had not hatched. You keep the chrysalis in a jar. Wait patiently, but ask every day, is he sleeping in there, Dad? The monarch finally appears in a briefest glimpse of beauty. Then shattered, misshapen stumps unfold, feebly beating rainbow-dusted glass. You take him outside. place him gently on flowers. Ask if I can tape the wings. Oh, my son, not yet ready to bear this terrible fragility. J. Meher Baba.
Beautiful, wonderful. Yeah, now any questions for Bob? Anyone? Well, let me ask you this.
And then
How-
Rich
Oh,
is
go
the-
ahead. How do you, how would you describe your life with Baba now? I mean, I mean, that's a kind of a very personal question, but like after, you know, all, whatever, 50 some odd years, how do you find yourself now with Baba? I mean, your experience and your kind of spirit.
Yeah, yeah. I have for many, many years now. Even when Jerry was alive, I would get up very early and I'd make a cup of coffee and walk out to the front room and turn on the light and look at my favorite photo of Baba, the one I feel most familiar with, and read whatever I was reading, whether discourses or God Speaks or The Everything and the Nothing Again, and and now and again when Baba wished, I would have just uh, well, Darwin talks about it. Darwin talks about it making space. I can't make space. I wish I could, but Baba can grant me space. And so in that space with, the sun coming up and streaming through the window onto that beautiful picture, I sometimes get a much clearer sense that, yes, Baba, you are with me. Here you are. Here I am. It doesn't happen all the time. Not anything that I can force, but I am convinced that even when I'm not feeling that presence, he's with me. I try to remember Baba throughout my days, no matter what I'm doing. Remembering, forgetting. I just, it's just, and I have moments where, well, when Jerry died, things got really strange for a long time. I could not, I kept asking Baba, well, what do I do now? Of what use am I? What is this? What? I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And occasionally I would, even walking around this neighborhood that I've been in for so many years, um, things would appear, and I'm looking at things that are familiar. I know where I am. But at the same time, there's this feeling of utter strangeness. And it doesn't happen quite so much anymore, but now and again it does. And it really brings me to remembering Baba even more. Just trying to give that to him. Trying to give I often remember a quote from Baba in which he said, leave all thoughts and feelings at my feet and be free. And I try to do that. And I say the prayers twice a day. I love doing that. And I just try to get on with whatever it is that I'm supposed to do in a way that is, if not pleasing to Baba, at least not displeasing him in any way. I guess what more can I hope for? But I'm hoping to, gosh, I don't know. I'd love to get back to India once more this life. I'm not sure I will. I am going to be at the center though, in March, so that'll be nice. So I don't know. It just does that.
Yeah, beautifully said.
Who is right? I know Janet has her hand, but
Richard.
Was it Rich who
Yeah.
had his hand?
Yeah.
Well, Bob told me a story once, and I don't know if it's really appropriate for this meeting, but it was about his son, and he was riding in like a backpack on Bob's shoulders. and they were in a store shopping for something. And that story, I remember that at the strangest moments, but it just cracks me up. It's totally, I don't know if it's appropriate, but you know.
Tell it, because I've kind of forgotten the deal. I haven't thought about that in so long.
Well, Bob had two sons, and they're both, you know, successful at what they do. They're good people. But so I think it was the older son, and he was in a backpack, and Bob was in a Home Depot at the time in Denver.
Yeah,
And so Bob approaches the line to pick up, he's only buying one piece or something. And he approaches the line, and like, there is a line of like 10 people, you know, it's like way back there, and it's not moving. It's not moving. And well, so anyway, so all of a sudden, Bob is really getting frustrated, and his son can sense this. And so he learned this phrase, I'm going to say, from Bob at one point or another. And so all of a sudden, this little 2-year-old out of nowhere says, "God damn, God damn, God damn," as loud as he can. I just see that picture.
He's in a backpack on my back, and people are looking at me. It's like,
yeah.
Who the hell else do you think taught him that? I'm like, oh no, he must have heard that somewhere else.
Oh man.
Well, you know, growing up as a concrete form setter and doing lots of other construction jobs, as well as working in the oil fields, my language is not always the best. And when I became a teacher, I had to really watch it. And so I did, but occasionally things would pop out, and then sometimes they would pop back on me like that. So.
Okay, Janet, you want to follow that?
Ooh, we can't.
Well, I
Good.
to say is sort of like contradicts that, but I just want to say about Bob's, when Jeff asked the question about Bob's current relationship with Baba, and I, you know, because I also go to the meeting, I don't live in Denver per se, but I go to the Denver group meetings quite frequently and see Bob quite frequently. And, you know, I just feel like Bob's presence radiates that sincerity and patience, which is not my strongest quality, and kindness, you know, that just helps permeate that group, and it's just so his relationship with Marababa, the unspoken. You know, I mean, I think it's true for all of us. I mean, we can't know how Baba works through us exactly. We can't necessarily feel it, but the what we can for what from an outsider's perspective, watching Bob, his, like I say, his patience, his kindness, as in all Baba groups. In our Baba group, there are people who you don't always resonate with on every level. You know what I mean? And I try to follow in Bob's footsteps, is what I guess I'm trying to say. Him showing me Baba's ways. So I just want to say that, how much I appreciate Bob.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Janet. I'm so lucky to still have these old Baba friends. And you are one of them. So it's so great that we're still having meetings here and getting together and you know, discussing and yeah, you know, you look at the Mondelez. There's so many different personalities, and we have them in our group as well. And it's you know, sometimes sometimes it's hard, but it's just wonderful to have us all together, and so wonderful to have us all together here. It's just.
You know, one time in Mondelez Hall, Erich kind of, I mean, semi-serious and jokingly, he said, there are two types of people that are drawn to Baba. This is in Mondelez Hall. Those who are very, very good, and those who are oddballs. And everybody kind of looked around to see what category people others they fit in with, It's an odd, as every one of these groups has got some real characters. Anyway.
Have the most oddball of the Zoom late night. And at that point I asked Tony, you raised your hand.
And speaking of oddballs.
Speaking of oddballs, my God.
Thank you, Tony. I know you could take it.
Oh. So Bob, I've been feeling so moved while you were talking. I don't know exactly why it's worked this way. I also have trouble focusing when someone's reading. So although I'm really good with dreams and hearing what they say, I miss the particulars of your dream because of that. But what would happen, I would zone into a space where I was just feeling so moved and touched by Baba's love and presence in your life, in my life, in our lives. And I'm thinking, like, I see myself on the screen and I'm going, you look horrible. What, are you going to start crying or something? But I was so moved by that. What was, I guess, between the lines. I made some notes so I don't forget. It was wonderful meeting you in Myrtle Beach. It was such a great experience.
It was a real treat. Yeah, just
Yeah.
to run into you, one of these folks that I see on this screen, all these little squares, and here's Tony.
Beautiful. It was wonderful. Also, you read your poetry so well.
Yeah.
My God, there are so many poets, I might say most, who do not read their own poetry well. And they've got so much heart, so much authenticity, an appreciation of the language and the nuance that you feel the richness of it. Some poets can do that. But that's just wanted to say that. Well, I think I said everything. Let me just see. Myrtle, emotional, Baba's love in our lives. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you. I feel very emotional right now from your sharing.
Beautiful. We've been together for all this time, and it's great to hear each other's story. I feel. I mean, yeah.
Hey, Bob, when did Jerry pass?
She passed almost 3 years ago, March 22nd, 2021.
And the love that you showed for her for all those years. I mean, it was really very touching to see. You looked after her.
I did, but it was a love that we shared so incredibly beautifully. I mean, it was definitely we grew into a love that I had never experienced before. With all the trials and the ups and the downs, and Baba put us together, and we fit, and it was absolutely one. Yeah, the parts of it were difficult, and when people hear about those last couple of years, I'm sure it sounds very difficult, but it wasn't. It was sustained by the togetherness and the love that we felt for each other and for Baba. So.
Yeah. It was very, very easy to see that love. Well, let's see. Shall we? Anyone have a quote to, or maybe a poem? Before a moment of silence. You got something there, Bob?
Yeah, I will. I've got one here, and I will read. I will read one more. It sort of fits the story, so I'll share it. It's titled "A Letter." Beloved Baba, I once thought to find a better place to be, and I went looking. But now, though mind sometimes pushes forth desire for change, I know there is no perfect place, no matter how clean and well lit, dry, lush, windswept or calm, unless there is somewhere else you wish me to be. The reality you explain makes more sense to mind and heart than any plans or desires. But daily the questioning grows, how to lay all understanding at your feet, and beyond sense just be, when this body that does not exist in reality exists for me, noticing each movement of fingers on pen, pen on paper, elbow on chair, head turning with mind, aware of every itch, twinge, ache, with all that seems so real, while all poor heart can do is ache for you. Jai Baba.
Mm.
Jai Baba. What's the date for next Sunday?
The 18th, Jeff.
Okay, so I'm thinking on Baba's birthday to to not have a session, because people will be celebrating Baba. Here we have a couple of plays and everything. But Does anybody for next week, anybody want to venture to share their story? You know,
Marta, I want to hear Marta's story.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I know
Yeah.
Me three or me four or five.
That would be great.
What do you think, Marta? Maybe she's got,
Marta, how long have you been with Mayor Baba?
she's got her sound turned off.
No.
Just
I
like,
don't.
like Audie, that, it was during the Artie. Yeah, what do you think, Marta? We will ask you questions along the way. I mean, surprisingly enough, we can get your story out of you and all the different aspects of it just as you go along.
And Marta, believe me, I really understand the hesitancy, because I really feel that myself. It's very difficult to sometimes get started. But now that I have done this with this group of lovely folks that I trust, it was fine. And so if you can, I would love to hear your story. If you don't feel you can, I'm sure we all understand that as well, but I'd love to hear it.
Even to hear about your childhood and what
Oh my God, Jeff.
and your wayward years.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's amazing.
It's really not a big deal.
Was that? Oh,
Hey, Peter. Is that Peter?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, Peter. That is sweetheart.
Peter, really, I mean,
for me.
yeah, I mean, that circles where we do it every so often. So really, and I'm hearing an echo because my Zoom connection was not good. I went from my iPad to my cell phone, back to my iPad. So I have my iPhone there as a backup. I'm telling your story. To me, in a way, it's really not a big deal. And if it really feels like a big deal, one thing I suggest you do is, if you have an hour, rehearse it a little bit. Just say it a couple times, write some notes out.
I appreciate that, Peter. I really do. And I mean, how can I say no to all this love?
but we will get your story out. You can show up.
I don't care about telling my story. It's just, like, why do you want to hear my story? It's like, after these beautiful presentations, like, oh God, okay. Well,
How long have you been
okay.
about for?
You know, it's a way to share. It's a way to share. Baba once said, and I just, one of my favorite quotes. Gatherings, I've got it on my bulletin board. Gatherings and meetings in my name should be a channel for the expression of my love. And to give them any other importance is to misunderstand my cause. It's what we do here. It's what we do here. And
Okay.
you know, no matter what it is or how unpracticed it seems or what mistakes or stumbling over things, it's all about sharing Baba's love. And these stories do that. That's what comes.
Also, it's not really, in a way, it's not really your story. It's Baba's story. It's your piece of Baba's story.
Exactly.
And that's why we really want to hear it, you know. But if you feel comfortable.
I'd like to vote.
Baba, or no, it was Baba dragging me out of my unknowing about him. You know?
Yeah.
I thought it was good the way you did it, Bob. I liked you reading it.
Yeah. Oh, good.
It was very coherent.
It really,
and he performs it too while he's speaking it too, you know?
Yeah. And so it wasn't like somebody reading something. It was enlightened.
Good, thank you. That's
entertaining.
Martha, you need to be shy about telling us about your prison sentence. Incarceration.
No, actually, you're not supposed to talk about that.
And you don't have to say anything that'll put you in legal jeopardy. That's
yes.
Jesus. Okay.
No, this will be.
But Marta,
nice.
if you do have a prison sentence, it adds to the juice of the story, though.
That's Don Euchre's story.
Oh my God! I get to see Peter laugh! Yay!
Like Don Euchre went to prison.
Oh, you're laughing.
Me? Oh, just give me
I never
time.
saw
I'll
you
be
laugh.
down again.
Okay.
Okay.
Like you said earlier, Marta, don't leave out any juicy details.
Yeah.
It's all about
Thanks,
the juice.
O'Hare.
No,
Okay, guys, thank you.
Eric really enjoyed her. Really. I don't know. It's too bad you can't depict that. There is a movie. Are Diane and Terry still here? Yeah, there you are. There is a movie that has Marta back in those, like 70s with Amara's Porch.
Amara's Porch, yeah.
Would you know where that? Do you know where that movie is? It would be great to see.
No, I don't know, but I remember once I was watching a Mara video, and all of a sudden there I was, and I was just like so shocking, because we were all kids, right? I mean, it's like, whoa. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. Oh, look, I put Marcia to sleep. No, there she's awake now.
Okay. Well, anyway, folks, I guess did anybody find out the final score of the game?
Oh, the Chiefs. Well, what was the score, Dad?
The 49ers did not win.
The Chiefs. What was?
And Taylor.
25-22.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's close.
Very close.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because the 49ers would have won it if they had gotten that 1 point when they do a touchdown.
Yeah.
The point. And it just shows that like just one person can make a difference. 1 point can make a difference. Everything counts.
Yeah, if they'd kicked that field goal.
Yeah.
Was there a baseball game tonight?
No.
There are some kids playing down the street.
They're being super.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. If Patrick
They were
Mahomes
bowling.
and anybody but Tom Brady, he's going to win. Tom Brady, he can't win. If it's against anybody but Tom Brady, he's going to win.
Yeah. No, it was really. There are really good reasons why Taylor Swift's boyfriend's team won, because she wants people to vote. I mean, she has millions of followers, and voting, she's really encouraging people to vote. Mm-hmm. That's going to make a difference.
You know, I looked
Even
up.
we in Germany heard about it. Was on the news, the Super Bowl.
Oh, oh.
Good. Yeah.
I looked up her Hindu horoscope, and she is quite powerful. She really has some power.
Yeah.
Hindu horoscope.
Yeah.
Hi, Dinku.
Yeah, Dinku.
What are you talking about?
The game. They're talking about the game that happened, I guess.
One thing
Got all about it.
cares
Well,
about
anyway,
that stuff.
Anyway, we guess we'll head on. Everybody, people on the East Coast got to get to bed. You on the West Coast have your Martina before you head off.
Where's Sabine and her husband live?
Germany.
In Bielefeld, up towards the north of Germany.
Oh my God. And you very religiously show up every week.
Oh yeah.
It's like amazing. Oh my God, it's just so nice to have you here. I'd love to hear your story sometime.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
We think about it.
Okay.
In German, yeah.
Yeah.
In German, okay.
No,
yeah,
not
we
in
can do it
German.
No, English.
English, yeah.
They have a beautiful story. We were in India.
I have a German story to share. It's brief. I was in the U.S. Army Medical Corps. We were stationed in Germany. It's Würzburg, Germany. I don't even know where it is in Germany. I was there. And somehow through correspondence with Kitty Davy and the Winterfelds, Fred and Ella, who were from Germany, I suggested that to Kitty. I asked Kitty about the idea, what she thought about having the universal message printed in. If someone could if it had been translated to German. We found out it had not. So Fred and Ella did the translation, and somehow I don't remember how I got this done, but I had them printed there in Germany. But I got them about 1,000 copies, and I didn't know what to do with them. So I'd stick a few in my shirt, when I'd go somewhere, and just if I saw a place to stick that would hold it, I'd put one there. Or if the opportunity presented itself, didn't seem too awkward, I would hand one to someone there. And one time, this only happened once, I think. Some buddies of mine there in the barracks decided to go to a house of prostitution, and I went along with them, and I took a bunch of copies and left them in places wherever there was a surface to hold them. And I walked around throughout the house, and wherever I'd put one, I'd make more than one trip. And wherever I'd put them, when I made the return trip, they were gone. I thought, well, I guess that's good. I don't know.
Yeah, you got a nice clientele there, Ralph.
I think they got eaten up by cleavage, Ralph.
You're the hero.
Say what?
Message of love and truth in houses of prostitution.
Yeah.
That's the name of his autobiography.
I mean, if there still is a German translation somewhere around, I would love to have it.
Yeah.
I don't know what became. The years have passed, and I've I don't know where they would be if that, or how I would come back a master or the plate for it. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's been done. Surely it's been done again, if not saved somewhere. I don't know. I've lost track of it.
Well, the interesting thing is if you ever find someone who has a copy, you'll know their history.
Yeah.
You know, Fred Winterfeld, he was actually, I mean, he came over sometime in the 30s to America, and Ella, they didn't know each other. She came over in the 30s as well, but he was Baron von Winterfeld. Where would that do? Where would he be if he was a baron? But his name Baron von Winterfeld.
Well, Baron is an aristocratic title. Van Winterfeld would be his aristocratic name. The Van indicates that he's a von, which is indicating that you are of a lineage.
Yeah, and Ella, through marriage, she was related to Rudolf Steiner.
Oh, right.
She saw him as a young girl.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah. They were a dear couple.
Somehow, Jeff, I had the story down, probably incorrectly, so help me out. You know, during our outings for dinners, you know, to the cafeteria and everything, somehow I got the breeze that Fred and Ella were together in Germany and toured around on a motorcycle.
Well,
and
that might have
left
been
and
after
left
they were.
and they got out because of Hitler.
Well, they actually didn't know each other. I mean, they might have
Didn't
gone
know each other.
after marriage, but
I see.
Fred was kind of psychic, and he was walking along the streets in New York, and he saw a woman getting out of a taxi, and her leg swung out of this taxi, and he recognized her legs. Meaning he recognized this is the one he was to marry. I mean, just came
Wow.
and she actually turned out to be German and everything, but I mean, didn't know at all. We just saw that, and that's the one he was married, and he kind of approached her, and they became married. And you know, they
were quite a couple.
When Baba was looking for someone to replace Elizabeth and Norina in the Monday night group, he was looking. A lot of names were submitted, and at one point, and Baba dismissed them, but he indicated at one point it would be a couple. He wanted a couple to head the Monday night group in New York City. And as soon as their names came, Baba said, "That's the one. Those are the ones." And they were. This was even before they met him. But it was wonderful. They were the perfect couple to look after all the hippie characters
And you know another thing, Chris Barker and I don't know, I think we either hitchhiked or took the train to New York City for a flight to Bombay for 1969, and then we were, pretty young and not long off of being dope heads. And we didn't give a thought to life in the future, from 1 hour to the next, And we ended up in New York, and though it was almost summer, maybe it was a very cool night and trying to rain. And it did start raining. And I remember we were standing on Times Square, and I said, "We got trouble." I said, our best bet is to go to the airport, go on to the airport where we can stay high and dry. And Chris said, no, look, I've got this brochure. And look, I have a phone number for these people. And this address is just down the block. All we have to do is walk down the street a ways. And I think we're going to be right there. As Fred Ella Winter felt we ought to call them. So there was a payphone there. And we called the Winterfelds, and Fred told us to come right on up. So we went. And Fred got us a room with they were the managers of what was it, an apartment building, a large apartment building, I think.
On the east side.
And Fred had a good friend who managed the building across the street. Fred had no place to put us. But this fellow had an empty, he did nightly bookings, I guess, in some cases. So he had an empty room no matter what. And they put us up over there. It was so nice. And we looked out the window. What month was that? April? May? The trip for to Guru Prasad. And Baba, the guy, I remember it was, if I remember, it might have been sleeting. I remember seeing a fella down on the side looking out the window. We were a couple of floors up, and there was a guy selling, roasting and selling hot chestnuts on the street down there. And it was a fine scene. It seemed winter, though it was spring.
Yeah.
Could have been April.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't March. We didn't go in March. It was those. I'd have to look the dates up, but
they were.
Marion would know.
I think it was April. I think it was April through June. April through June.
Well, we were April. We were the first, I think. Myrtle Beach, I think, was the first group to go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, we'll talk about them some night. We did a do.
Oh, well, the end of the story. Let me tell the end of the story. So I had a red flannel shirt that I took just in case it got cold, you know. It was a Pendleton shirt. They're good, really good shirts. And somehow I was carrying over my arm, and I handed it to Ella. Bob, who was Rick's good? Robert Dreyfus was there with them. He actually answered the door and let us into the apartment and introduced Fred Ella to us. I remember that large portrait of Baba. I think it was over a couch. And I think Ella took my shirt. Well, I forgot to take it with me when I left. And I dropped out of college. I'd been out of college a little while. And so we went to Guru Prasad in two groups. And one group went some hours before the other one, maybe as much as 6 or 12 hours before the other one. And that was the first group to fly out, was a smaller group. And the second group, the whole plane was full of Baba lovers. And Fred and Ella were on that plane. And they tell me that almost the whole trip that Fred managed the intercom system on the plane, singing Baba songs and leading cheers for Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. But when he got to India, I was right before Baba's chair there at Guru Prasad in the main hall, not in the antechamber where Baba would meet with the men, you know. On one side, you know, the film of Baba eating popcorn. It wasn't that room. It was a big, large ballroom. And Fred approached me there. had just arrived, and it was the first time I'd seen him. He approached me and he says, "Ralph, you left your shirt at our apartment," and he had it with him. And then he said, "And Ralph, there's this. Your parents got a hold of Kitty and they sent this to us. They thought you should better have it." And it was my draft notice to appear to be in the Army, mandatory service, to be in the Army is my draft notice.
Wow.
Be in the Army. And Fred handed that to me there.
No,
I thought that's my God.
So helpful to so many people. Yeah.
What a world. Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting kind of, I'll tell you something really quick about Fred. Fred fought World War I on the side of the Germans and World War II on the side of the Allies. And because he was German, he was stationed in the Far East. So he was in New Guinea, and he was there one day, and there wasn't much to do. And one day, he and this Australian guy went just to explore the coastline, and they were kind of walking along the coastline, and they didn't have any weapons or anything. And at one point, they kind of stopped, and out of the woods, there were all these natives that were surrounding, and they would take a step and come closer and closer, the menacing kind of atmosphere, and they're just right there on the edge of the water, and out of this woods, these men come. They have them surrounded, and they were in real danger. And at the last moment, the Australian took out his false teeth and started going like this at them, and very slowly they moved back into the forest, back into the woods, and so they were saved. But what an ingenious thing! He took off his false teeth, and freaked them all out.
That's funny.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have had Fred. We wouldn't have had Fred Winterfeld. Anyway, we better go, folks. Much love. Hey, Baba.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Lovely to see you all. Jay Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Beautiful.
Very Bob.
Hey, Baba.